TRS clips, that one channel where you get to explore the unexplored realms of knowledge. The broad topic we're speaking about is enlightenment.
Okay.
I think you're linking it to the Kundalini rising.
Yes.
That's what we say in India, that the Kundalini rose through the spine.
Yeah.
My next question is about the spine and the cerebrospinal axis.
Okay.
They say that all the chakras are in the center of your body.
Okay.
And they also coincide with important glands or organs.
Okay.
So while you're trying to dive deeper into the science of Kundalini and chakras, do you consider the particular glands or organs located at the positions of those chakras?
Largely speaking, no.
Ooh.
So this is where, like, I think, so we have to understand something. So first of all, this is just my opinion. Okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
I think there's a basic problem when people try to connect spirituality and science, which is that the majority of people who understand spirituality don't really understand science. Okay, so if you think about, like, who's the most spiritually developed people that you can find? If I go high up in the Himalayas, I find some cave and there's some yogi there, their understanding of anatomy is not going to be great. So people will make these correlations. A good example of this is like the pineal gland or the pineal gland in the Agnya chakra, right? So let's walk through that argument, and then let's also be critical of the argument. So let's understand what the pineal gland is. So we have this tiny little gland that's behind our forehead, right where the Agnya chakra is supposed to be, or actually the kshetram. The Agnya chakra is back here, but it has a thing in the front, whatever.
The friendlier word for Agnya chakra is third eye.
Third eye. So we have this third eye. And so we have this thing called the pineal gland. And the pineal gland basically does one thing that we know of. It makes melatonin. So it has these very primitive photoreceptors. So this is what's really cool about it. We talk about a third eye. So we have photoreceptors in 3 places in our body, or actually way more, but generally speaking, there are 3. We have 2 eyes, and then the pineal gland actually detects...
What's a photoreceptor?
Photoreceptor is something that detects light.
Okay.
So like we think we detect light with our eyes. And the reason is because the pineal gland makes melatonin. So melatonin is a hormone that governs our circadian rhythm and our sleep-wake cycle.
It basically, when it's released in your body, you suddenly feel a little bit of sleepiness.
Exactly. Its release is inhibited by light. So if you kind of think about, people will say, like, you shouldn't use screens before bed. And one of the reasons for that is that there's this idea that if you use a screen, the pineal gland is detecting light and it thinks that it's daytime. So it will not release melatonin. So it won't help you go to sleep. And then if you're trying to recover from jet lag and stuff, people will sometimes take melatonin to help them sleep. So there's this idea that, okay, sure, there's like some melatonin production. There's some, stuff related to eyes. But what does that have to do with like intuition and understanding? So that gets a little bit disconnected. There's some theories that DMT, which is a hallucinogenic compound,
found in ayahuasca.
Found in ayahuasca. And so we know that DMT can be produced by the brain. So this is really fascinating. But we don't know where it's produced. So some people will claim that it's produced by the pineal gland. We can get into that if you really want to get into the biochemistry of it.
Maybe now.
Okay, so here's the key thing. So I don't know if it's produced by the pineal gland, but what I do know... Okay, this is going to get a bit technical, okay?
That's fine.
So the building block of DMT. So first of all, let's decide what we know and what we don't know, okay?
Can I just add a little bit? Let's give the really casual understanding of DMT out there as well.
Sure.
I think Joe Rogan's responsible for popularizing the understanding of DMT globally.
Yeah, let's take a step back.
Yeah.
So sometimes human beings, so like we're sitting here, we're talking, people are listening. This is an ordinary perceptual experience.
Yeah.
You can see, you can hear, you're you, I'm me, they're them, right? We're not like all some blend of consciousness or whatever, this weird stuff. So then what happens is there are certain compounds, hallucinogens. Okay, so these are things like DMT. These are things like psilocybin found in magic mushrooms. And if you take some substance, people have these weird experiences where they feel connected to everybody else. I've had several patients who have tried this stuff, and it can be a part of treatment and things like that. We can get into that later if you want, like what actually happens with people. We also know there are now studies that show that taking some of these compounds in the right way, which is really important, can result in healing. So there are certain mental illnesses that are very difficult to treat. Treatment refractory depression, chronic PTSD. These are the things that there are now studies on things like psilocybin, more psilocybin than other things. Sometimes we'll also do studies on ecstasy, which is MDMA. So which actually people will have something called treatment refractory depression. What does that mean? That means that they have depression. We try to give them treatment. They'll try medications. They'll try psychotherapy. Nothing really helps them very much. And they'll do psilocybin in certain settings, and then they get better. So, and then if you ask these people, what happens that allows you to get better? And this is where things get even more technical, but I remember we're talking about DMT, so I'm not going to go there yet. But so they have certain kinds of experiences where they feel connected to everybody. They feel like, when I have patients who have depression and they feel suicidal, their thoughts or their minds are filled with, I'm a loser, I'm pathetic, I hate myself. And then when they take psilocybin, they have a different perspective on life. Okay? So this is just a fancy way of kind of getting around to what is DMT. When people, there's this substance called ayahuasca. Actually, is DMT from ayahuasca?
Yeah.
Okay. And the ayahuasca has been used in spiritual traditions to evoke these greater conscious experiences. And as a part of these Native American, South American like healing journeys and things like that. So when you trigger these states of mind, here's the key thing. There's a chemical compound that triggers a state of consciousness that can lead to healing and gives people an expanded perspective on life.
I've made an entire podcast on this.
Yeah.
But ayahuasca visited my life at age 22. I don't go out chasing it. And it's been my life's most important experience. Lots of stuff shifted.
Yeah. So I think there's a study that, when people take psychedelics, studies found that, most people will rank this stuff as one of the top 5 experiences, profound experiences of their life.
Probably number 1. And I've meditated for years after that.
Yeah. So we can get it. There's all kinds of safety concerns. But here's the key thing to consider. This is what I think a lot of people miss. So any chemical compound cannot create anything within you. This is what people really need to understand. All a chemical compound can do is activate your existing circuitry. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Right? So if I look at alcohol, why is alcohol a drug for us, whereas like this plant behind you is not? That is because the chemical compound in alcohol triggers our existing machinery. Specifically, alcohol works on the GABA receptor. THC, marijuana, works on the anandamide receptor. Ketamine, for example, works on the NMDA receptor. So we already have this machinery. It's just DMT and psilocybin activate it in an unusual way. But what this means is that theoretically, we can activate this machinery without the DMT. And this is where meditation comes in. Or what happens is not that we're activating it without the DMT. We are producing the DMT in our brain automatically.
Yeah. What I will also say, as an addition to what I said earlier, is that the 10 years of meditation since the ayahuasca has obviously been 1,000 times more powerful. But if I just single out that one experience, it was intense and pivotal. And then I just stuck to the meditation after that.
Yeah, so we can talk about that too. So that's something that you're lucky, because what happens for many people is they have such a powerful experience with something like ayahuasca or psilocybin that is so easy. Like you don't have to work for it, right? You just take it and then you go there. Whereas, so oftentimes what'll happen is people will find meditation they'll be less motivated for meditation because meditation takes so much longer. And there's even some stuff that I now understand why my teachers said you should stay away from all of this stuff, which is not something that I understood before. But once you understand the mechanisms of things like spiritual experiences, which we'll talk about, then we can talk about why you shouldn't do them or why you should.
Yeah.
Key thing here, though, is that, so taking a step back, remember that DMT can be produced by the brain. It's been detected in people and in rats. So there's some source of DMT in the brain. DMT can't work on the brain unless it activates our existing machinery. So the machinery's there, DMT just turns it on.
Okay.
Okay?
And different human beings have different degrees of DMT release?
Undoubtedly. Now we're going to talk about how that happens. So the interesting thing is that the building block of DMT is serotonin.
Ooh.
Right? So not many people know this. So I was trying to figure out when someone meditates for 10 years and you have this profound spiritual experience where you're like seeing deities and like all this kind of stuff, like what is going on in the brain? And then I started to think, okay, well, clearly there's some overlap between spiritual experience and psychedelic experience because people will describe similar things. So what's going on here? What's going on in the neurochemistry? So DMT is produced by serotonin, but DMT is produced from serotonin.
What do you mean?
So if you look at the chemical structure of DMT, it is derived from serotonin. So if you look at the chemical structure of serotonin and you make a couple of modifications to it, you end up with DMT. We've also discovered a couple of the enzymes that are probably responsible for that pathway. So it's like I have this building block, I snip off a hydroxyl group, I add a carbonic group or whatever, a carbonate, like I add a methyl group over here, I remove a methyl group over there, and then I end up with DMT.
This is the only point in my life where I've enjoyed organic chemistry.
Yeah, so this is why like it's crazy, right? But we don't teach people like if you want to discover how to make DMT, you have to study organic chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a difficult subject to wrap someone's head around unless they have a fun teacher.
Yeah. So here's the key thing. So then I was thinking, well, and that for me was a interesting moment because now when I think about, so here's what I had studied is if we sort of look at things like depression, we believe that depression has to do with a poor serotonin activity in the brain. Even anxiety disorders, panic disorders, poor serotonin activity in the brain. If we give someone a medication that boosts their serotonin activity, their symptoms of depression and symptoms of anxiety go down, right? You with me? Now, here's the cool thing. If we look at meditation and yoga, we have all these yogis that are like, be detached, be content, be happy. This is not pleasure. It's not dopamine. Dopamine is pleasure. Dopamine is playing video games. It's doing drugs. It's having sex. It's having fun. It's riding roller coasters. That's not what yogis are talking about. They're talking about contentment and peace. Contentment and peace comes from serotonin. And a good example of the difference is when you work a hard day and you do a good job and you go home and you're tired, it's not the same joy as a roller coaster, but you feel good. You feel accomplished, right? That's serotonin.
Your brain releases it in your bloodstream?
Your brain releases it in your brain.
Ooh.
Right? So it's synaptic transmission. So one neuron will release serotonin and another neuron will pick it up.
This feel-good serotonin, what are some human activities that trigger the release? If you could just list out 2 or 3. So
serotonin will get released with things that make you content. So a good example is if you accomplish a difficult task, that will release serotonin. Just anything that leads to contentment. So even watching a sunset, that's not like pleasurable, right? You're not like, oh man, like I'm going to go on vacation and it's going to be so fun.
It's not thrilling.
It's not thrilling. So dopamine is thrilling. It's not fun. So we use different words. So
every time you feel a thrill, it's a surge of dopamine?
Basically.
Yeah. Every time you feel like a sustained pleasure, like thrills spread out over slower.
It's not thrill. So I would say like when you sit in the morning with a cup of tea and you enjoy it. For me, a big serotonergic boost is watching my children sleep.
Gotcha.
So like, when I first had my kid, like everyone's like, you love your kids so much. And I was like, I didn't feel that when my daughter was born. And I was like a little bit worried because I didn't feel this overwhelming. People be like, the moment, the child comes out of the uterus, you feel this. And I was like, I don't feel that. This is just, just a bundle of whatever. And then over time, I used to like watch them sleep. And it's like, you just feel peaceful. You feel content. So working hard is a great way to get serotonin and feeling accomplished. And then using all these yogic techniques too, developing vairagya, detachment, that will boost your serotonin, right? So the whole point of yoga is to be content in spite of your circumstances. So I don't know that they understood this, but they're cultivating contentment. right? You do this meditative practice so that you're content every day. Divorce yourself from the fruits of your actions. Focus on the action itself, not the fruit of your action.
Tiny anecdote. I had a yoga teacher friend, and my own yoga coach has said something parallel. Mumbai is a very noisy city. And we were in traffic once, and I said that, dude, I can't wait to move out of the city because of the chaos and the noise. So my friends told me that, hey, you know what? The chaos and the noise is actually inside here. There's no chaos and noise outside.
Well said.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's nice. And then I started doing yoga.
Yeah.
Life-changing.
So I would say, being here in the city, there's absolutely chaos and noise in there. The tricky thing is when that chaos and noise enters us, we have the ability to block it off, or we have the ability to receive what the environment has. But if you look at all these yogic practices, they're all basically serotonergic boosting practices, which is why when you have all of these like yogic inspired things like mindfulness that are now parts of psychotherapy, if you go see a psychologist or psychiatrist today, most of them will teach you how to meditate, right? So these people figured out certain practices that essentially boost serotonin.
Gotcha.
And then you do the practices very rigorously. You do them for hours a day. You do sattvic diet, right? You control your diet. What is a sattvic diet? It's feeding your serotonin producing neurons. So I think what they're basically doing is boosting their serotonin a lot. And we're talking in sort of a reductionist, simplistic way. But they do all of these things to where their serotonin level skyrockets. And then a small percentage of that turns into DMT.
Like excess of serotonin.
Exactly. That's what I think.
Compared to the average human being.
Right. And that's why you have to do yoga seriously in order to have a psychedelic experience. You can't just do meditation for 20 minutes a day, or maybe if you're lucky and blessings of Shakti and God and whatever, that maybe can happen. But generally speaking, from a scientific mechanistic standpoint, and this is where I've had some personal experiences and I've seen the difference in my own spiritual practice when I eat meat, when I drink caffeine, when I wake up and meditate at 4 a.m. versus doing it at the end of the day. There are all these things that people are doing. Another good example of this is when I start patients on serotonin medication for depression and anxiety. If they follow an Ayurvedic diet, then I can take them off of the medication in about 6 months to a year without problems. And I think what the Ayurvedic diet is, most of our serotonin comes from our gut. So when you eat the right kinds of things and you when you select for the right kinds of gut bacteria, and there are 2 kinds of gut bacteria that are very low in people with anxiety, for example, and 2 kinds of bacteria that are very high in people with anxiety. So when you alter that gut through Ayurvedic diet, which is what I think is going on, then you're producing your serotonin factory is turning on, then you no longer need to ingest it. That's my understanding of it.
Wow.
And there's science, basically, just to be clear with people, there's science for like 50% of what I'm saying, but it's like 50% here, 50% there, and I try to fill in the gaps a little bit.
Man.
Yeah.
I think it also leads you to your next steps for your research. Exactly what you're doing. And these kind of conversations also push you in that direction. I don't know if you'll be able to quantify this exactly, but say there's an average human being, like a college student who's just living a normal college life. And then there's a yogi. And the yogi has 100 units of serotonin in his entire body. And some of that serotonin is turning into DMT for his crazy experiences. As compared to 100 units, what do you think the college kid has?
5.
5 compared to 100. Wow. Thank you for consuming this clip, दोस्तों. अगर ऐसे ही और clips explore करने हैं तो इस channel के playlists को ज़रूर explore करना.